Adair County town faces a new lawsuit. The suit challenges town rules that block a local entrepreneur from earning a living. Joining us now to discuss the suit is the attorney working with that entrepreneur, Donna Matias of the Pacific Legal Foundation. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We're going to get into the case in just a moment, but first I want to hear about your client, who is an entrepreneur in a business that's a little bit outside of the ordinary.
Yes, it is and it isn't, and I'll tell you why. So Amy Hill, our client, had a brick and mortar art gallery that featured local Outer Banks artists and artisans. And when the pandemic shut her down, she sort of pivoted and decided that she would refurbish an old school bus, and she was going to take her show on the road, as we like to say. So she refurbished the bus, she knocked it out, and she turned it into a mobile art gallery, essentially. So she was still able to feature the local artists, and she would, depending on the town, she would go and she would set up the bus and she would feature the artists. And then she also had a pop-up art market that was part of it. So it was the bus, which she called Bus 252, was selling the art. And then she invited other local artists to come and set up and sell their wares as well. So it's a little bit different in that sense. I think it's actually very creative, but it's also very much like other pop-up food trucks, for example, or I live in Southern California. We have pop-up clothing designers that often will do little bazaars. So it's similar to that.
So she took the pandemic and the lemons of the pandemic, made this lemonade of having this new mobile art gallery. But in dealing with the town Kill Devil Hills, she ran into some problems. Tell us about that.
They won't let her serve the lemonade, basically. She's considered an itinerant vendor, which means basically she's not a brick and mortar business. So there is a special itinerant vendor ordinance in Kill Devil Hills that makes it all but impossible to really earn a living as an itinerant vendor there. And I'll tell you why. It's based on a permit system, and if you're an itinerant vendor, you have to have a special event permit. There are only two avenues to that. One is that you apply, and if you apply for a charitable special event permit and you're a vendor selling, you are prohibited from keeping your proceeds 5 months out of the year. And those happen to be the 5 months of the town's busiest season. So that's May through September. You cannot keep your profits. You have to donate them to an IRS recognized charity. That's one avenue that just simply cuts off profit for the summer or for the high season. The other avenue, only other option that an itinerant vendor has is to ask for special permission for an exemption from the Board of Commissioners. They have complete discretion in deciding whether and who will get to operate as an itinerant vendor. And in Amy's case, both of those avenues have been cut off for her.
And I understand that this first came to light when she tried to operate at a local brewery on private property. Was it as if she was trying to use the Kill Devil Hills town hall or something like that?
Yes, that's exactly right. And in fact, every time she's attempted to set up her pop-up art market, she has been invited onto private property to do it. So in the first situation, it was Outer Banks Brewing Company. They have some big backyard space, and they invited her to set up a market there. And the town would only allow it, as I said, in the lower season. So she set up a winter market there. She could set up a Christmas market, but she could not operate after May 1st, unless she agreed to donate all her profits, which makes it tough to run a business.
Now I understand while all of this is happening, the town itself has set up what is essentially competition.
Exactly. Yes, they have set up what they call the first flight market. I believe the first one was last summer after Amy had been asking for permission to set up her market, and they denied it. They then went ahead and set up a first flight market on town property, Aviation Park. And they have recruited some of Amy's artists, but other local artists to essentially do exactly what she is doing. And those artists and those itinerant vendors are exempt from the rules that Amy's vendors are required to abide by.
Now, some people might just say, oh, this is a bad local rule and shake their hand or gnash their teeth. She's actually going to court with your help. Tell us what the suit entails and why you believe that Kill Devil Hills has violated her rights.
Yes. So North Carolina has in its constitution, it's the only state that has in its constitution a fruits of their own labor clause, which specifically protects the right to earn an honest living. And that is the basis. That's a crux of our suit. That's the main crux of our suit. Because in making it impossible or all but impossible for Amy and other itinerant vendors to operate and actually run successful businesses, the town has cut off that fundamental right for them. So that's our main claim, and that's what we're proceeding with.
You mentioned this provision of the North Carolina Constitution, and folks who are familiar with our website, carolinajournal.com, have seen this discussed in the past. How helpful is that for people who are trying to protect their economic rights to have something like that actually spelled out in our state constitution?
Well, our hope obviously is that it's going to be very helpful. And the case law in North Carolina, the fruits of their own labor suits have been very successful. And the language from the Supreme Court has been very protective. And as I say, much more so than you would get in federal court, certainly, and even under other state constitutions.
If Amy and her business win this case, what's the hope? Basically, that she'll just be able to operate in Kill Devil Hills on private property, have her mobile business operate just like any other business?
There's that, absolutely. That's certainly what we're hoping for. But on a broader scale, we're seeking to protect not only just the rights of other itinerant vendors, and again, that calls into play, food trucks and other sorts of people who don't have brick and mortar businesses. But also what we'd like to do is really bolster this idea that the North Carolina Supreme Court has recognized, which is that everyone should have a fundamental right to earn an honest living. And I think that it would be a great example to other states to have a victory in this point, and to have language even from the court that really show why this is such an important part of living in a free society.
Well, this suit has just been filed, so I'm guessing it's going to be a while before we hear anything one way or another about the next steps in the case.
Yes, we just filed this morning, and we'll proceed along. And I don't know what the response is going to be from the town. I'm sure it won't be open arms, but this is how change is made. So.
Donna Matias is an attorney with the Pacific Legal Foundation, and she is representing Amy Hill and her business, which includes that bus called #Bus252, part of her company, and the mobile art gallery that she operates there on the Outer Banks in Dare County. It's a very interesting case. We'll be following along very closely. Donna, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.